Geography 507, Geography of the Global Economy, Module 14, Part 1. We're going to begin our examination of the industrialization of China. China has obviously become one of the major players in the global economy, and this transformation has been very recent and very rapid. We're going to begin with a start point of much of our discussion, and that's going to be the impact of the Europeans through colonization, then eventually the backlash against this leading to a series of political revolutions. And that'll set the stage to look at how modern industrialization began to take place. When we're talking about China, first, it is a very large country. But that said, a lot of the land is not easily used for agricultural settlement. If you look at the big brown blob in the middle of this map, that's the Tibetan Plateau, large mountainous area. The yellow off of it is either mountainous or desert. We have the Gobi Desert to the north. So the only area suitable for agricultural settlement, historically and in current days, is the green area to the east. Now into that green area, we're going to put a lot of people. Currently the world has about 7.4 billion people. China contains about 1.4 billion. Now that's a little under 20%, but that's quite a shocking thought. Almost 1 in 5 of all the people on our planet live in one country, live in China. Now this is a population density map. You can see the areas that are very highly populated, very densely populated, and that pretty much corresponds with the green area we saw on the previous map. Now China is a long, old, ancient civilization. We have had production and trade going on for a long, long time, and we had trade throughout East Asia, South Asia, into the India area, for example, and throughout parts of Central Asia in toward Europe. We've had what's referred to as the Silk Road. Now, in our discussion of Europe and merchant capitalism, this is probably made most popular by Marco Polo back in the 1200s. It starts to stimulate the idea of exotic goods of trade, and it's going to tie into the increase in trade through our beginning of merchant capitalism. Along with that, we're going to have European exploration, and we'll get the Portuguese establishing a trade fort in Macau in the 1550s. Later, the British establishing a trade fort in Hong Kong or Canton in the early 1700s. We're going to have an increase in trade, especially with the British. The East India Company will set up house here as well. Excuse me. And a major item of trade, we mentioned this before, has been tea. The British were tea crazy. The Chinese were very happy to sell the British tea. But the British wanted to trade, because with trade, you're not paying someone else's retail prices without recouping profit on your own. China was not interested in anything that British had in terms of trade. So we hit a point where a lot of the silver out of the Bank of England is ending up in China. And there's a fear of destabilizing the British economy. So there becomes a big push by the British to find something that they can trade or sell to the Chinese. What they end up with is drugs. We're going to get major opium trade, a lot of it growing through South Asia, being traded into China. And as we know, that's going to start to culturally undermine Chinese society. And so there's going to be a backlash. The Chinese emperor is going to try to stop the inflow of British opium. They're going to seize British ships. The British are going to claim that's an act of war, and we're going to get the first Opium War. This lasts from 1839 to 1842. Britain is going to win. They're going to gain full control of Hong Kong and access to other ports. Opium now is going to flow in like crazy. The Chinese will try again, and we have a second Opium War starting in 1856. And this time, the French and the Germans and the Russians join in. And China's going to lose again, and we are going to have great inroads by Europeans into Chinese territory, Chinese ports, taking over Chinese lands, really establishing a colonial structure like we're used to. Farmlands will be taken away and organized into large plantations. Poor Chinese peasant farmers are going to become poorer Chinese peasant workers. We have got the disruption of a long time economically sound, culturally unique country. And this is going to lead to backlash. It's going to take a while. But by the time we get toward the 1900s, there are strong nationalist movements developing. Nationalist movements because of the humiliation of losing territory, the humiliation of losing economy, the humiliation of losing sovereign control. One of the first big ones happens in 1900, and this is called the Boxer Rebellion. Now, the Boxer Rebellion is going to involve a band of revolutionaries, and being a revolutionary is seen as a good thing. They're going to be roaming the cities and the countrysides and attacking foreigners. Foreigners, foreign companies. They're also going to be attacking Chinese who had become too close to the Western businesses and had adopted Western cultural ways. This is going to end up leading to a full-scale political revolution that gets started in 1911. We're going to have the Qing dynasty overthrown. Now, the emperor will be removed from the throne in February 1912. The emperor at this time is 6 years old and has been serving as emperor, has been ruling for 3 years. So you know a toddler is not going to rule a country. It gives you an idea of how strong the Europeans are behind the scenes, dictating whatever happens in China. Now, this political revolution is going to be led by a group called the Nationalist Party. The Nationalist Party will replace the emperor. Now, the Nationalist Party wants to create a democratic country, equalize land rights again, but they realize that the economic power at the time lies with the Europeans. So they're looking to work within the capitalist system with the Europeans, realizing that they need that type of outside collaboration if they're going to pull themselves up in any kind of short order. Now, the Nationalist Party is led by Sun Yat-sen. Once the things get started with the Nationalist Party, we're going to have different continued revolts throughout the country. That's going to add to instability. Sun Yat-sen is going to develop cancer. He's going to die in 1925. As the decline of Sun Yat-sen is happening, we have a new leader going to be emerging called Chiang Kai-shek. Now, as this evolution is taking place, we're also going to get other organizations. And most notably, in 1920 to 21, we have a number of student demonstrations and labor demonstrations, and we get the rise of the Communist Party. Now, one of the young strike leaders at the time is a man named Mao Zedong. Now, communism is attractive to many young students because of the promises of equality, because of the logic put forth by Marx and Engels. That also appeals to many Chinese Confucianists. And the result we get out of this is the building of a fledgling Communist Party. So in the early to mid-20s, we start to see an informal alliance between the Communist Party and the Nationalist Party. This ends abruptly in 1927 when the Nationalist Party becomes fearful of the gaining popularity of the Communist Party, and they start to attack. So the alliance ends, and we move into the start of the Chinese Civil War. And this is going to last about 22 years, 22, 23 years. Now, the Communist Party is not the national government. It doesn't have the same military capacity, and they're being attacked by the nationalists. So they organize a strategic retreat, and the purpose of the retreat is to gain support of the peasants, the rural peasants. China at this time is about 90% rural. Most poor peasants either working on marginal farmland or as farm labor on major colonial plantations. They set out on what's called the Long March. Now, a couple of things are happening here. One, yes, they're trying to gain the support of the poor peasantry. Two, they're trying to escape the nationalists who are attacking behind them. The red squiggly line in the middle of this map is the path followed in the Long March. And this goes from 1934 over the winter into 1935. Over this time, we're going to have the communists marching through the countryside. They're going to be wearing the equivalent of pajamas with socks and flip-flops. They're going to be being attacked from behind. They're going to be heading into the mountains through the winter. During this grueling march, they estimate 80,000 people set out and about 8,000 survive. Now, Mao is going to emerge as the leader of the party out of this. They are going to gain support from the Chinese peasantry, from the rural groups, and they're going to be solidified with these rural masses. Nationalist power at this time tends to really geographically reside in a few of the major cities. Now, in the midst of this civil war, Japan sees the chaos, Japan sees the opportunity to invade. And they're going to invade in 1937. Interestingly, the communists and the nationalists stop fighting, band together, drive out the Japanese. When we get to World War II, this is going to happen again. With the final defeat of the Japanese in World War II, the communists and the nationalists resume their full-scale civil war. One by one, Mao's troops surround cities until they fall into communist control. We hit a point in 1949 when Chiang Kai-shek is going to concede defeat on the mainland. He's going to retreat to the island of Taiwan, which was part of, maybe still is, part of Chinese territory. Two things happen here. One, he's able to do it with U.S. protection. Remember, the Nationalist Party were capitalist collaborators, if you like. The other thing he does is he's going to clean out all the gold reserves in China's bank and take them with him. And again, this is happening under U.S. protection. Now, Chiang's going to remain there until he dies in 1975. But he's now gone. In 1949, Mao Zedong is going to proclaim the birth of the People's Republic of China. Now, this takes place in Beijing, the historic capital, in Tiananmen Square, again a very important open square, takes place on October 1st. We now have a new country. We have a massive communist country. We have a country that suffered a century of colonial interference, another half century of revolt and civil war. It is bankrupt, it is poor, it is rural. Welcome to the New World. We're going to see what Mao does to try to pull China up by its bootstraps.